right. Hi, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Nikki Berry, and I'm here with Kimberly, Lindsay, and Rachael Jacobson, and we're going to talk today about home educating kids of multiple ages. And I am just going to facilitate today and ask questions of Kimberly and Rachael and let them talk because my kids are, well, my youngest is just 3, so I haven't really gotten into this yet. So I'm excited to learn from these ladies who have much more experience than I do. And so first, I just want to let the two introduce themselves. So Rachael, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, like the age of your kids and how long you've been homeschooling and all the good stuff.
All right. Well, I am Rachael Jacobson, as Nikki said, and I have 4 kids. They are 12. I have 2 older girls. They're 12 and 10. And then I have 2 younger boys who are 5 and 3. So we have a fairly good age gap there. So hopefully it'll be helpful for everybody on both ends because my girls are 18 months apart. My boys are 2 years apart, but there's a 5-year gap in between. My oldest is our really laid back child, and my second is your typical second child, just like, whoa, what were you thinking? But she's also dyslexic and dysgraphic. So it kind of changes some things for us because we have to not only have a regular curriculum for the oldest, but also something that is geared towards more of a visual learner and someone who's not quite reading on their own or should not be reading on her own yet. And she's 10, so that makes it a little bit hard. But I live here in Steamboat Springs. I'm originally from Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas. So I have kind of a mix on homeschooling in both states because we started in Texas and we now are in Colorado. And both states are very different for what they require for homeschooling. But yeah, I would love to get more into kind of what curriculums that I use and that sort of thing. And I know that we'll get there at some point. So, but yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So I think we talked a lot about this, but I'm Kimberly, Lindsay, and we've homeschooled from the beginning. I actually, much like Rachael, also in Colorado and in Texas. And my oldest was born in California, but we left before he was school aged. So my oldest is about to turn 11 in October, and then I have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old. Their learning styles are all very different, as are their personalities are completely different. My oldest loves everything Weird Al, and music and art and drawing and comedy and your typical jokester, trickster guy, which makes a lot of sense when we look at our family culture because we're in the film business. And then my middle child, she bounces between what the oldest and the youngest likes. And she really, my 2 girls very much like bookwork and workbooks. And my oldest, no, that's like the death of him. Don't make me look at a workbook or a piece of paper. So I have very competing styles there. But that also matches, just who they are as people. So I love that we get to choose curriculums and a form of education that matches their personality styles.
Awesome. So the first question I want to ask you ladies is, first of all, do you use curriculum for any of them? And do you use different curriculum for each of them? Or so if you could speak into that, Rachael, first.
So I do. I do not use necessarily different curriculum for my kids. I use kind of the same because they all kind of gravitate to the same thing. So we started, ours is more Christian based, but not all of it is. So for us, we started out with My Father's World. And for us, that was a little bit too much seat work. And it was fun because those of you that have different age children, you can group your children together and they're essentially learning the same thing, but on their grade level. So you're all learning, let's say, about the ancient Romans, but they're doing different work on that geared towards what age they are. However, for us, we chose to homeschool so that we're not sitting in the same processes as public school where they're in their seat and they're doing a lot of paperwork. And so for that reason, my father's world ended up a couple of years, and then the kids were like, I really don't like this. We weren't getting anything out of it, so we switched. So we went 1 year trying the unschooling method. I thought, well, a lot of friends are doing it. It's not for me. I need to have a basis, because otherwise, I mean, we can always go out on a hike and end up our whole day learning a lot of things. And we can do that. But for that to be my whole year, I couldn't guarantee that my kids would be learning the things that they need to learn. I do think that math, writing, reading, all of these things are important. And if I don't have anything to follow along, I don't know that they're doing all of the things that they need to do. So mid-year, we then found something called The Good and the Beautiful. And we started on that. And that is something that my kids thought was so fun. And I just bought some of the curriculum and I tried it. They do have a lot of free stuff for you to try. However, for not all my kids can do it. And so, there again, you run the risk of, some of your kids being, doing harder stuff, but I was fine with that because my older child loves to kind of go with the flow. My second daughter, she cannot currently work completely on her own because she's, not currently reading all the way. So for me, what I do because of that is my oldest daughter and my second daughter, they're 18 months apart. They're very close in age, but they're 2 grades apart. They will work kind of together. And so I usually choose curriculum that I can gravitate to for both of them, but, change it so that it fits Graceland, my dyslexic child. And so for me, I use like a hodgepodge now of things. I don't use, like I did with my father's world, one full program and buying it all and just dealing with it. I now use, what do we use? The Good and the Beautiful for history and English. And we use Barton Reading and Spelling, which is the dyslexic program, but I'm using it for all of my kids. I found that it's a lot easier to teach them the dyslexic brain, and they all get it. I mean, it's awesome. And then for math, we use Math UC. So we just kind of pull things that my kids gravitate to, and we use it individually based for my children. But I'm not going to do like, okay, you like this over here, so I'm going to do this specific for you. I'd never get through my day that way. So there is a little bit of pulling, but this works better for everybody mostly, and this works better over there. So hope that helps.
Are you doing anything for your younger kids right now? Or that's a different question?
No, I am. So that's a good point, because I kind of forget about them because they're 3 and 5 as far as when I'm talking, because I feel like the girls are, they're really into homeschooling. We've been doing it for so much, but the little boys, we do something completely different. So for them, we do 5 in a row or before 5 in a row, which is a literature-based book. And it's really fun because for me, and we'll get into that, I know that's one of the questions, but for me, I love getting my older girls interested and involved in their education, the little boys' education. And so we do something for them that's literature-based, and then we do handwriting without tears for some of the other stuff. And it's really fun stuff. I mean, they're getting to use their hands, and boys are very different from girls. I kind of lucked out on that one, that I've got the like chunk here and the chunk here, because I can start teaching them colors based on, hey, go organize all your cars. Red one's here, green one's here, but I don't do anything totally sit down work with them. It's I kind of go with the flow with them and learning kind of on the go. Okay, let's organize your toys. Let's find all the red things or all the, that sort of thing. So I'm not heavy on the curriculum base because I really feel like it's very important for them to be kids young. And when they get, into first grade, second grade, we get a little bit more like, okay, time to more focus, for you guys. But everybody's different, and you can choose what's best for your kids, because maybe your kids want to learn quicker, younger.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking to that, I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, I had a friend who I met when my oldest was 2 or 3, and we did a Waldorf co-op, and Waldorf doesn't do the academic stuff until around 7, but her daughter, who was 4, about 5, wanted to start reading. And she was like, I can't keep her from reading, can't stay in this methodology and keep her from reading. She's begging for it. So, they said, that's not going to be right for us. And then they, went a different way, because that's what worked for her daughter and what she was asking for. So
well, I think that's important to remember too, is that all the kids are different. And so just because, one of your kids didn't want to learn at a younger age does not mean that the other one won't, or vice versa. Maybe you don't start even at 7. Maybe you don't get serious until 8 because they're smart, they want it. But if your kid is not willing to learn it, you're not getting anywhere. And that's where the frustration, even for me in school, in the public school setting is math did not come easy for me. There were things that didn't come easy for me. The dyslexia comes from my side of the family, and I was never diagnosed, but as I'm learning about it with my daughter, I thought, oh my gosh, I think I might be dyslexic. And so, it's also gearing your understanding that everybody's different. We all know that, but education is huge on that. You have to know that all your kids are different, and it's okay to make specific changes for one child. For that 4-year-old, that is not usually something common for most 4-year-olds, but if they can do it, do it. I had a friend that's daughter taught her at 5. She taught herself how to read because she was so interested, and she just taught herself to read. She was that interested in it, and that's cool. That's fine. Do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's similar to mine. My 10-year-old, I really try to, there are certain things for me, and I'm very clear about this, for me, and per the state guidelines that I have to provide, I think it's grammar and reading and history and science. I can make that look like whatever I want it to look like. Right. But there are certain things we're going to do in our house because I need that. I need to know we're checking boxes on math. I need to know that your reading is growing and that you're comprehending more, and that you're, we're going to talk about certain things of history, and we're going to talk about, so I have certain workbooks that we've used, and like you said, where you've taken certain curriculums and you've started with it, and then you can kind of figure out if it works or not. We've decided to never go back to some. And so I'm going to get lost on what this question is. So my older one, there are certain workbook curriculums we do, because for me, it's checking the box that I can visually see the growth. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I have to be really clear with them when they get frustrated. Okay, this is a mommy thing. It's just, what's the word? Just go with me on it. Just trust me on it. And then go with the flow. And then, so then we integrate things that he likes. He does a lot more art-based stuff than my other kids. But then I have I have Right Start Math, and they use a lot of games and manipulatives. And then, so for my younger one, or some days I know the workbook isn't going to work. Then we get out the games and we get out the manipulatives, and then we bring in that unschooling vibe, where it kind of says, maybe that's a wrong description, the unschooling vibe, but to say, okay, how can we put that away, and how can we see where all these things exist in life already? Nikki, what was the rest of the question there?
Just asking if you use curriculum and if you use different curriculums for different kids.
So we do. So then we do have curriculums, and then again, we find the curriculum that works for like each kid. Where, like I was saying, if it's math based, and my younger one, it's more, it's more games and that sort of thing. And then, I think that's where we are. And then throw stuff away. I have a whole list of like 5 or 6 different curriculums. I'm like, well, that doesn't work. And that worked one year, and they've gotten older, and that doesn't work again. And it's always just playing with it. Hi. I see a little one over there.
Awesome.
With that, I agree. And I wanted to add to that, because it's funny, as I've gotten a lot of people, as I'm sure a lot of you are, but, oh, look at the cute little one. But anyway, asking me like, what curriculum do you use? And it's funny because I can tell you what I use, but that does not mean it's going to work for you. And I have gone through so many curriculums that I'm like, and buy used. Go online, buy used, because we're not doing any of the like conferences this year, really. So you can't see it and touch it with your hands, but buy used. A lot of times they're fine. I've had great success with it, but I change curriculums a lot. And it's mostly because, and sometimes we'll go back to things because it was boring, because now it might suit us better. So be flexible. That's a huge thing. Be flexible on the curriculum.
Well, and like sometimes with reading, we use Explode the Code with reading, and I'm using that with all my kids. And sometimes it's sitting down and doing, a page or 2 or 3 or 5, depending on what their energy level is, on Explode the Code, which gives like slow integration of reading and grammar skills. And sometimes we don't do that for a week or 2, and it's just pick up a book and read.
Mm-hmm.
And going, okay, reading happens in both places. So are we going to sit down and learn new grammar skills, or are we going to write today, or are we going to read today? So
Right.
you can look at the same topic and find out different ways to implement that and then integrate it.
Awesome. So you guys have kind of touched on this a little bit already, but do you lump your kids in together when guiding them? And what does that look like with your kids close in age and that sort of thing?
So I do lump my kids together for something. So, when we're doing like, we do a lot of reading. So when we're reading a book or whatever, everybody sits around, and whether they're actually sitting and listening, a lot of times the boys are playing with cars, or they're drawing, or even the girls are drawing, or they're working on typing, or whatever it is. But mostly we work together. And I just like that feel anyway. But then there are certain things that the boys can't be sitting in with the girls because they really need to concentrate. And the boys are 3 and 5, and they're boys, and they're loud and distracting. And so a lot of times whenever I'm doing things that need to really work, so let's just say with my second oldest, who's dyslexic and dysgraphic, when we're working on her dyslexic curriculum, I usually have the older one take the little ones and do some of their literature-based reading. So she'll go and she'll read them a book, or they'll do art together, or they'll just play with letters. And it also gives me a time to have quiet time with Graceland, usually about 30 minutes at a time. It gives Kinsley, my oldest, time to be a teacher, to, learn the things that it takes in order to be, teaching a younger person and giving back in that way. And she's also learning by teaching them as well. There's a lot of lessons there. But for the most part, when we do history, whether our boys are actually listening, they're still engaged. They're still at the same table as us. We started out having a homeschool room when it was just the 2 girls. And we found that it held our curriculum, but we traveled around the house and outside. And so as the boys have come along, I've just decided we're not doing the homeschool room. We have a space that holds our homeschool curriculum, but when they're doing quiet time stuff, they usually go to different parts of the house, and then I'm able to work with the boys. So when I'm working more with the boys, the girls are doing the things that they can actually do on their own, that they don't need my assistance. We've already talked about what their math lesson is, so now they can take their papers and do their math. They can do typing, they can do Spanish, they can do those things that don't need me, and then I take the boys to do their things. So the answer is kind of a bit of a hodgepodge, but for the most part, we learn together. But when we have to do age-appropriate lessons, quiet lessons, then usually one of the older kids is with the younger kids, or vice versa. The 2 older kids are by themselves, and I'm working with the boys.
Awesome. Before you speak, Kimberly, I want to highlight that, Rachel, I'm getting a lot of questions from people like, how are you, like, you're sitting down, they have this in their brain that they have to sit down and do lessons for hours at a time, and that's not how it works. It's
No.
20, 30 minutes at a time, maybe even shorter in the beginning. So I just wanted to highlight that it's small increments of time that
Very
you're
small.
actually doing the lessons.
And I don't know if any of you have seen, and I'll post it in the group if it hasn't already been posted, but there is something that came out for it, like grades and how much time that you should be spending, or you typically spend. And it is very, I tell people all the time, oh, we probably school for like 2 to 3 hours, depending on their engagement level. And they look at me like I have two heads, and I'm like, but it's because it's fun. First off, I want my kids to have fun with educating, but also, if we just sit down and do it, we're not having to shush our other students. We're not having to take potty, they take their potty break and they come back and they work. And they know that when they're working, the rest of the day is for play. So if we can get it done, then we can be done, and also, if you have a bad day, I cannot preach this enough. If you are having a hard time, maybe your younger boys are not being quiet enough, it's okay to end your day and say, we need to be out in nature. And it's also okay to take a backpack with your math into nature onto a mountain and say, cool, we get to do homeschool in a hammock today, and change it up totally. I mean, it's supposed to be fun and engaging. And that is the whole concept of homeschooling, is being flexible and understanding that you don't have to live within these confines of, we didn't do school today. Oh my goodness, that's okay. There's still Saturday if you still want to get that day in.
Okay, your house sounds really fun. I want to come. I love what you said about and then I was thinking, oh, this happens a little bit in my house, but how when you're working with your 10-year-old, how your 12-year-old re-engages with the younger ones.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's a big question for a lot of people, is what do I do with the younger kids when I'm working with, maybe the older kids? And then you're saying, well, okay, the oldest is now going back and helping the youngers, and that's beautiful. Okay, so I was just so in listening to Rachael that the question was what?
Do you lump your kids together?
So when it comes to the curriculum stuff, often. So if my oldest is going into 5th grade age, has a 5th grade age in the traditional public school and a 3rd grade age. And if I'm looking at curriculum stuff, if I'm buying stuff for 5th graders, I don't buy 3rd graders or 4th graders. I just buy for the 5th grade, and the 2 oldest do that. Because my 3rd grader, she can do it. And then if I don't know why I would teach her a lesser history or a lesser science. I don't think that's a thing, right? So if there's something that she couldn't do, I would just adjust it. But she can do all that. So that saves me on curriculum. I'm not buying a 3rd grade curriculum and a 5th grade curriculum unless they need separate notebooks. Then I just buy 2 of the same and I write their name on it. But I learned that the hard way, because I was always getting 2 different grades, and I was thinking, these are so similar. And it was spending so much of my time to do them separately, because I would have to work on hers and they would have, just different topics, but the same quality of work. And I thought, I can save time in my life and in their life if we just pick one and do that. And then I just shoot for the higher grade level. And then did that make sense? Did that land? Because
it really.
And then for my younger one, she just turned 5 last month. So she really, really, really loves workbooks. But she's not doing, of course, what the older kids are doing. So the older 2 are sort of lumped together, but she's separate. She's sort of her own. We've not really done too much school with her, but she likes workbooks. So we do a little. What I do see happening is that when my son really needs focus time, because he's the one that gets a bit resistant to doing certain things. So if I want one-on-one time with him, my 8-year-old, who is a girl, and my 5-year-old, who's a girl, they go do their things together. So she kind of keeps entertained, and sometimes that looks like drawing, or sometimes it's just playtime. Mm-hmm. And then I realize I have a whole day, so we don't always do. So if they take 30 minutes off or an hour off, then we'll do their school. And sometimes we're doing stuff at 5 or 6 o'clock at night, just to make sure we get those lumps of time. So I'm not trying to say I got to take care of everyone in 2 hours. I have the whole day and we're going to do their stuff and their stuff. And I just sort of have to flow with the energy on that. Kind of like what you were saying, Rachel, about how it doesn't have to look like sit down. It's a little piece here and a little piece there and a little piece there. And if you lump it together, great. And if not, and you get to it later, then that's when you get to it later.
Totally. And I mean, I'm with you like the 5 or 6 o'clock. Sometimes I cannot get people to quiet down enough for Graceland to be able to focus. I mean, the dyslexic brain is very energetic. You see a lot of like, you know, they're very visual, they're very artsy, that sort of thing. And so if you cannot be quiet and have focus time in there, you're not going to get through it. So sometimes that looks like when dad's done with work and can entertain the other kids and they can do something that we can sneak away and do that for a short amount of time. It is huge. I mean, knowing that you have the whole day, that was a perfect way to put it. You have 24 hours in a day. You have 24 hours to get school done. It does not have to look between these particular hours unless it's snowing and you want to get out on the mountain. Then you're like, come on, get the work done.
Right. Unless you've got like, you know, you've wrapped up other stuff around it. And then different days can be different things. One day you might sit down and it might work for everyone to say, let's hammer through and do all this. So we have all this time off. And then sometimes it just works better to go, okay, let me get through this and then go do other things, cook, clean, and then come back.
Yep.
Awesome. And I think too, especially for my oldest, the small increments and throughout the day, like she does not do well with, okay, we're going to do math and then we're going to do science and then we're going to, like, no, she has to take those breaks and she has to have just complete mind relaxing in between. So,
well, take a note from Sweden, and this is kind of jumping off topic a little bit, but that's me. And you know, when you talk to me, that's typically how it is. Squirrel kind of thing. But in Sweden and some of those countries, you have where they have a lot of play-based education, and I cannot stress that enough. At least for my kids, that play-based education is huge. So when you are learning a subject and it's not going well at first, go and play. I mean, I start our day that way. I'm like, go ride your bike for a little bit. They need to get that energy out so that then they can calm their mind and listen. And it's, gosh, that has been such a blessing when I finally realized it was like a light bulb that went off. And I thought, you guys need to go play for a while. You need to have PE outside now. Go jump on the trampoline, go do something. And then they come in for a little bit, they do a subject, and then we go back out. And it doesn't always look like that, but that's mostly what our day looks like, is a little bit of this and then playing. And sometimes we involve other families in what we're doing. Sometimes we don't. So really, but getting them out, like you said, Nikki, and playing and taking those breaks is huge, because otherwise it'll be like swimming upriver to get to learn.
Yeah. I work in mental fitness, and that really taps into, because when you're here in your left brain and you're in logic and you're learning new things and you can get into the fight and flight and that sort of stuff. And then when we do something different, physical sensation, senses, 5 senses, and activate that right brain, it really calms the whole central nervous system, which speaks in exactly what you're saying. Mm-hmm. When you can like relax that and say, okay, I'm going to go do this fun thing. I'm going to do this relaxing thing. And it activates that gray matter in your brain. Then you can be recentered to come back to that work stuff later.
That's cool.
Right?
Mm. I want to talk more about that with you another day. That's so interesting. That's fascinating.
All right. So the third question, of course, you guys have already spoken into this a lot. So what do you do with your younger kids when you need to instruct the olders? Like, do you have specific tools maybe that you didn't mention yet? And yeah, just speak into that for me, please.
So for me, I try to set, so we have activities, like when we do 5 in a row or before 5 in a row, there are set activities with certain books. And so I try to remember kind of what we're working on with them and set up games, things that they can play together. They can play Zingo, and now they're learning letters, and now that, you know, they're even learning self-control with games like that. Another big thing that we have been using as of recently with the boys is they both really love to draw. And there's this really fun YouTube channel that has this dad that teaches kids how to draw. And my boys love that. And so that has been because our girls don't take a lot of time for the things that we really need to be quiet on. So I'm like, boys, it's art time. And I'll try different things. So maybe they'll be drawing the same thing, but then to color it in, I'm using pastels, or I'm using, very different things that they can get their hands wet with. We typically will have like a set of Play-Doh out, or I'll do, whatever it is. I try to change that up. But that Kids Hub app has been, or YouTube channel has been amazing for us. Another fun thing is just getting out like manipulatives like Kimberly had talked about, or, salt in a tray, and you just say, practice your letters, or draw in this, I'll put salt or sugar in, usually salt because I'll eat the sugar, in a container, and they're drawing their shapes or whatever inside of that. And for the most part, that sort of thing, that sort of busy work that is exciting for them, and changing it up, that is the biggest thing. When you're working with young and old, the young kids need, the old kids do as well, but on a different level. The little boys, they need a lot of variety. So if I'm learning letters, sometimes it looks like drawing letters in sand or in salt on a little bowl. They're drawing it that way. Sometimes it looks like using watercolors. Sometimes it looks like getting cars and making the letter P on the floor. Recently, what I did, because I have 6 kids now, I have my sister's children, and they are 10 and 8. But I have them for a month, and we're still doing a little bit of school. And so what that looks like for the little boys is I drew on the floor, and with tape, a course for cars. And so they're having to learn, you got to go left to go right. And they're learning problem solving without realizing it. And they're playing on the floor. So it's just having different activities for the younger kids versus the older kids. But I absolutely lump my older girls together like Kimberly, and I buy one curriculum for the most part, and I manipulate it as needed for the different ages. The biggest thing is, if you're needing to focus time on a certain age child, having something, whether it's fun, they don't all have to be learning at the same time. So having something that's fun for your younger kids to do, if the older children, or vice versa, whatever, have something to do. And so what that looks like when I'm working with the boys is the girls are reading, or they're working on writing, or they're painting, or they're doing their own art. A lot of that can be done on their own without me needing to watch while I'm focused in on the boys. And including, I hit on this earlier, including let them teach each other. I mean, I think that's why everybody thinks that they need to put their kids. I love that. Oh, homeschool, how do you socialize your kids? It's like they socialize all the time. Like they're talking to the grocery store attendants. They're like, they don't ever stop. I mean, that's how you know a homeschool kid, because they just chatter. And so I think for me is realizing that your kids can interact, and that's how they're going to learn some of those social skills that they would also learn in school. Is you have to be able to take your younger kids and allow them to help out with the older kids too, and vice versa. The older girls can take the boys, and they know their letters. They know how to teach their brothers how to learn a letter. So including them in their education as well. I hope that helps, because I was kind of all over the place, but.
Yeah, thank you. So the question was about what we do with the younger ones. I get so involved in listening to Rachel, I don't actually know what the question was. Yeah. I'm trying to figure some of that out, because my younger one, I know what we've done is similar. Sometimes I have to ask her, what do you need right now? Mm-hmm. Do you need to go play? Do you need outside? What can I do to provide that? Do you need quiet time in your room? So that's probably the first thing, is tapping into her needs and what she needs. Sometimes she just needs to go sit down and eat while I'm working with them. So to figuring out what her needs are. And then sometimes I can't work with the older ones if she's going, haywire, right? So sometimes I do have to split the older ones up, and then I have to readjust my plan and go, okay, so we're not going to do that right now, but I can do this with him or this with her. So that one can go play with her. Does that make sense? See, I love this. Somebody said, it was Kim Kardashian. She said, have 4 kids. She was like, don't stop at 3, have 4. So somebody always has somebody. And sorry, I don't know where I heard that from Kim Kardashian, but that makes sense, right? Because she's alone. She doesn't have that other person to play with. So sometimes I do have to break them up. But right now I'm really looking forward into saying, how can I engage with her in ways that I didn't get to do with my older ones? There were things I wanted to do with them that I didn't have the opportunity to do. I didn't feel like because I always had a baby to tend to. And so like, I also have the 5 in a row, and I have the books, and I wanted to do with that with my big ones, but I always had a baby. So I was just so overwhelmed, and I still have the curriculum. I'm like, okay, well, I have a kinder kid. I've got things, these sweet ideas, the Waldorfy things, the little book ideas that I didn't get to do. And so now I have an opportunity to integrate things that, that were in my ideal head. Right. And I get to do that because each day is a new day for our home education, and each, we get a change and shift along the way. So I'm hoping to bring those bigger kids in to help, guide her through and to do some of that stuff. Because one of our big values is, we're a system, and we are a family, and we're going to work together, and we're going to bring everyone along with us. So if she needs help, how can we all work for her too, so she doesn't get left behind?
Totally.
I love that, Kimberly. I love the how you ask, like, what do you need? What do you need from me right now? And that for different kids looks like asking in a different way, or what would you like to do right now, or what, right? But that does not get asked in a public school setting very often. And so, being able to pour that into our children, and give them what they need in that moment. And so, Kimberly, you already spoke into the last question a little bit, and if you have anything else you want to add to it, that's great. But Rachel, is there anything that you didn't get to do with your older kids that you wish you would have implemented, and that you're going to do with your youngers?
I think for me, the biggest thing is realizing that I don't have to be, because I was not homeschooled. I was in a public school setting. And so it was all new to me. And so I kind of felt like I still had my public school brain on, and that we needed to sit at the table, and we needed to do the school, and we needed to spend multiple times, like lots of time doing it. And if it wasn't working, you have to sit there and you have to, it was kind of unfortunate now that I look back at it, that they kind of had a hard start to homeschooling. And so for me now with the boys is I realize, it's okay for me to decide that, what, I'm fine with teaching them their letters by, writing, playing with chalk outside. They don't have to be sitting down with a curriculum book in order to learn. And so for me also is realizing that I don't have to buy one curriculum set, and that I don't need to use it for them no matter what, because we bought it. Now I can pull a little bit of this, pull a little bit of that. I think that's the biggest thing in nature learning. Taking those breaks, going out in nature and learning on the go. I love nothing more. And it's going to be, I don't know what that's going to look like this year either, but I love to learn about various different things. Here we have the Ute Indians. And so we were learning about them. And then we ended up going to a Ute Indian powwow and getting to learn things and then seeing it. I did not implement that initially with my girls, and I'm really excited to do it with the boys, because my boys seem to be very visual learners, in that learning about this, or say reading a book and then watching the movie, how exciting that is for them. And just above all, creating something for them to be excited about. And so for me, when I started out with the girls, it was like, I'm doing school because we have to. And while I still understand that we have to, it's also making them excited to learn, So now when we go out, I almost sometimes get frustrated because there's so many questions, but I've ignited that in them. Not every kid walks by and sees a tree and asks, why does it have this growth on there? But my kids do. They want to know all those details. And I'm like, darn it, do I have cell service? Because we need to Google this. Like, why does it? And I love that. I love that we've sparked that in them, that whatever they choose in their later life, they will always be digging in and asking questions, not sitting back and saying, I don't know, and just moving on. So I think that's kind of, and I don't know if I necessarily even hit on anything other than just kind of learning to be more flexible and learning to like individualize the education and having fun, and not putting so much pressure on myself to be like a public school teacher.
Thank you. I love hearing what's happening in your house and our similarities yet our differences. And it's been a joy to meet you today, because I didn't know you before today, and then to hear about your family and what you're doing.
Thank you.
Yes. Lucy, Kelly, any thoughts or questions? I just ended that because I had answered earlier, so I just assumed my answer was okay.
Yeah, let's open it up for questions. And
well, I feel like a little bit of an imposter because my kids, they are enrolled in public school. They actually go to a public, it's a choice school, so it's a Montessori school. So that's better, right? Like, that's good. And we've been kind of struggling with this whole what to do in the fall. And I've been kind of going back and forth on staying with the school but doing virtual learning, or just sacking it all off and just saying we're going to homeschool. I think at least at the beginning we are going to try to stay enrolled in the school, because if we unenroll we'll lose our spot,
Right.
and we'll lose the whole community of the school, or you know what I mean, all of that comes with the school. So we're going to be at least giving it a shot to see how the virtual goes. Listening to you guys talk about all the flexibility, that's my biggest concern. We still don't have a schedule. We don't know anything. They just cannot decide on anything. We don't know what it will look like. My biggest concern is that it's going to be very rigid, and like you have to log on at 8 a.m. and do this lesson, and then you get 30 minutes to work alone, and then you're back logging on. Like, that's my really big concern, because that's when they get frustrated, right? And that's when you're trying to manage 3 different kids on different levels, but they're all expected to be sitting at the same time. So it's been really good listening to you guys talk about the flexibility, and it just makes me think about how can I try to bring some of that to our days, hopefully. And I don't know, maybe come November it will be just such a disaster that we'll just say, hey, we can't do this. I don't know. But I think my other thing is with my kids, they are all at like schooling age, right? So my youngest is going into 1st grade, and then I have a 3rd grader and then a 5th grader. So I feel like I don't have like 2 who I need to work with and 1 who can just play, or like the other way around or whatever. Also, my oldest is probably like, especially with reading, is way advanced, so can take on a lot more material. And like Kimberly, I know you were saying like your daughter can keep up with Charlie at that level, but I would say that's not the same in our house. So I do feel like they're working at different, I would say all 3 of mine are probably like where they traditionally whatever would be. Do you know what I mean? So it's like I do feel like I need to work with each of them at that kind of level. I don't even know what I'm saying now, but just I think like when we did a little bit of virtual in the spring, I think that was my hardest thing, having 3 that really do need, I feel like they need to be learning. And like for my youngest, she needs to be learning to read, right? Like I can't just let that go. And she's math at this age, I think is fine. Like a 1st grader is pretty simple, right? But and then with my oldest son, I feel like the math is where his reading is whatever, I'm not worried about that. But with the math, I do feel like he needs to keep practicing that, and I don't want to just let that go by the wayside. So how do I make time to sit with him a little bit on that stuff, but also be sitting with, I feel like they all 3 need time when I can really sit and focus with them. And I guess that's the hardest.
So this, I don't know if this works with how the online and the Zoom classes are going to work. And I know that you don't know how they're going to work yet, but what I heard is similar to Rachel's, where her oldest helped her youngest. And you said that, William's more advanced in the reading,
Yes.
it's going to depend on how these Zoom classes work, but maybe he can go in and help,
Yeah.
the girls. I don't know, maybe there's a way to engage that way. But then again, he might be like, Mom, I am already in so many Zoom calls. Why do I have to help them? So
Yeah.
that I'm not sure how that would go. But in a full traditional and a full homeschool away from the school system, that could also be part of what his learning was. So part of your learning and reading today is going to be, helping one of your sisters. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good idea. I will definitely keep that in mind and see how it could maybe fit in. But I was also curious about, I'm trying to decide how to give them all their kind of quiet space, but I don't want it to feel like they're all separated. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So how trying to figure out how to find times when we can work together, like you've been saying, but then allow also space when, like they each need 30 minutes to really focus in and concentrate. And
well, I think that's going to depend on subjects.
That,
I think it depends on subjects, because there are certain subjects that you guys can all lump together. And then there are certain things, like you said, math or whatever, that they, maybe couldn't do at the same time. But that doesn't mean that they couldn't all be doing it together. And then that's where it comes in, is picking the right curriculum that works for you. Because they can all be learning the same thing based on their age level. So maybe the paperwork that they're doing is at their own age, but then they're still learning. English will be one of those things, though, that they're having to learn how to write their sentences or whatever that is. That's more where they are going to separate and be doing their own things. But you can make that to where their schedules are kind of going like this. So you guys are sometimes together and other times they're separated. And you can do those also days. Maybe you don't do English every day, you do it on particular days, and that's maybe the time where you're doing more individual based for one specific child. I will say, as you are going into this homeschooling journey, or maybe not, I just wish that you guys all got the fair shake at homeschooling that we got when we first started, because there's so many more resources. And for me here, I help run a homeschool group, a co-op here in Steamboat, and it's kind of a no fee. We just kind of all do it and get together. But, a lot of the people that are coming in to do it, they're not getting the same experience that we are, where we're doing one day a week where we all get together, we all socialize, do those same things. But we're also getting to talk to other moms about, hey, I'm kind of struggling in this particular area. And you're getting to sit together, to be together, watch your kids together and get ideas. And so, that part of it's kind of hard, because I have several friends that are just like you. They have their kids in Montessori. What is that going to look like online? I mean, Montessori is very, very much with your hands. I don't know what that looks like for you. And I mean, hopefully we can be your village to help you out in some way. I do see that you can be successful. I think that you can be, I know you can be successful. Biggest thing is don't put so much pressure on yourself. Know that, you have your best intentions for your kids. You're going to do the best that you can. Just try not to put so much pressure on yourself to be perfect with schooling.
And I would say too, Lucy, is I think that you've got this idea, which we all did at the beginning, or at least I could say the majority of us did at the beginning. We had this idea of that it has to look like we're all learning math at the same time. How can I be in 3 different places at once? They all need their quiet time. But again, that's not how a typical day works. It's okay, I can have the other 2 kids can go play and they can go do whatever they want. They can have their free time and I'm going to focus right here. Or it's being flexible with your day and allowing it to flow in a different way. And also recognizing too that your day doesn't look like 6 hours a day. It looks like small, very small little increments with each kid.
Yeah, and I guess that's just the piece that I'm unsure of right now, because as I was saying, we don't know what the virtual will look like, right? So my hands may be tied in terms of like that kind of how much flexibility we get. And so that's just kind of, I guess that's my biggest concern, like how much, at what point, what would be the breaking point for that to say, no, this is not.
Well, what's your breaking point?
Work,
I think that, what's your breaking point?
Yeah. All three of my kids screaming and crying, and that's not, no one's learning anything, right? So
well, it's an uncomfortable situation that they're putting a lot of parents in, and I've been very frustrated. I mean, my sister has 2 kids that I have currently for a month. Long story, she just started nursing, and she just graduated nursing school, single mom, so I can have her kids and help her out in that way. So, but they're going back to school. They're going back to school 2 days a week. They have autism, vestibular processing disorder. They've got some stuff going on. They need to be in the school 5 days a week. There's no way that she can do 2 days on, 3 days off. And then they're expected to do online learning. It's not going to work. So for me, hearing you as well, it kind of fires me up, because I feel like it's not fair. They're not, and I know that this is like an unknown time that we're in, but at the same time, for you to still not know what's going on, it then puts all this pressure on you, and it isn't fair. And I'm so sorry that you're having to go through that. But I will say there are a lot of moms that do homeschool doing the Montessori approach. And the cool thing about Montessori is that it's super like hands-on.
Yeah.
And much of almost what I do, like learning out in nature and going out and do. And so I think that you could be highly successful at it. And I'm happy, if later, you want me to connect you with a mom that does do it, or, something like that, or at least helping you to somehow get a village, or helping you however I can. I love that about homeschooling is we are a community, and I call it a village all the time. I'm like, you guys are my village, and we wouldn't survive without each other. But it is so true, because, you can bounce those thoughts off. But I just see it, and I don't know you at all, but I just see that you just obviously want the best for your kids, but you have no direction to go in, and you have no idea, like you say, like you're just going to continue going on with what you have, because you don't even know what tomorrow's going to look like for them. And that's unfortunate. And I'm sorry.
We could just get a schedule. That would be helpful. Then you can
kind of
see like how much downtime do we have to play with? Do you know what I mean? Like, what is that going to look like? Kimberly, can I ask you one more question? You mentioned earlier about how Charlie doesn't like workbooks, right?
Mm-hmm.
William's the same way, like completely, like any paper books, it's just like no. And the girl's the opposite. But so what do you use for him? Is it a lot of like computer stuff, or is there like what else do you do?
I still do some workbooks, and I'm clear about, today I need this to be done because I need to know that progress is happening and that sort of thing. So there's some discussion and designing around that. Sometimes it's, if he's happy, go lucky, I have to check in with where he is in his being, quite honestly. Depending on his being, he's going to get that workbook and he's not going to be triggered by it. But if he's hungry and all that sort of stuff, he's going to be more triggered. But then I do look at, well, how can I implement other things? He really loves the math programs online.
Yeah.
Great. He's learning math, he's advancing, and he found something really fun that they begged to do. So then I kind of go, okay, well then we're going to learn math that way, right?
What do you use? What is that math?
Well, so we've changed a lot. Currently I'm using Prodigy.
Yeah.
And then we do sort of, we do add in the Right Start math, which is very manipulative, and there's games. And then sometimes we still have workbook stuff. So I can kind of see. Prodigy is great because on the back end of the parents, you can see.
Yes, I just signed mine up for that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So, and you can see like what grade level they're on, what they're doing, how many questions they're getting right, not getting right. And then, so like for history, my husband is a history buff. And so history is more oral. And then there's a lot of documentaries and that sort of thing. And then science is more projects and hands-on. And then reading, I don't care what he reads. You know, we do the Explode the Code, but if you want to read a book about bugs, cool. Let's get a book about bugs. Yeah. So it's really, somebody on a group the other day, I don't know if this was local to Texas or not, they said their kid really loved baseball. And he told his mom, if I can learn everything I need to learn via the lens of baseball, I'm in. And so people are like, cool, we can help you do this. Yeah. You can get history and science and math and reading and everything via the baseball lens.
That's William. He loves baseball too.
Yeah.
Hear him talk about baseball stats. It's pretty unrelated.
Yeah. That's like in my house, except for we cheer for the Giants. So, you know, maybe they can have a, you know.
No, yeah, it's not the Giants.
Hey now.
You would care. I don't care.
Yeah. So, but I wanted to clarify something to make sure that I understood what Rachel was saying when she was talking about if you do choose to go, if you do choose to step away from the online and you go fully into homeschool, to see if I understood what she was saying about chunking time, about say, you know, maybe we say, okay, what we're going to do for the first half of the day, or even for a whole day, is today will be all day around math. So we're going to just have that lens of math today, and it can ebb and flow throughout the day, and then everyone's sort of in there because you have kids in very.
Back in the spring, it worked pretty well. Actually.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, like let's do this today and that today. It works some, and then other days, you know, inevitably one kid doesn't feel like doing math that day.
That's true.
You don't want to like.
Yeah.
But it's quite a useful way.
When you were talking about saying, well, they're all in very specific different spots, right? Yeah. So then but what's cool about that is when you set up that, if you can get everyone on board, if you can set up that lens, then you can easily bounce around because you're not having to switch your brain, okay, science over here and math over here and history over here, you know?
Yeah. It flows a lot easier.
Yeah.
And you don't have to have a whole day geared around one particular, but for us, we don't do history every day. We don't do everything every day. We jump around. And so there are days where, you know, flexibility is the biggest thing, especially when you have multiple children that you're homeschooling, is being flexible because like you say, you may not have every child that wants to do math on that particular day. There are sometimes you're going to have to put your foot down and say, sorry, I understand. And I don't always want to do the dishes or make your meals, but I do. And you don't go hungry. So, however, for the most part, you know, you can decide if none of them are really in it, then that's fine. Let's do something that you know that they like, you know, or starting the day off, maybe saying, you know, hey, we're going to do this. And later we're going to do this really fun science experiment, you know, making it exciting. But flexibility is huge.
And if you're not in it, if the frustration is coming also because you're realizing that you're frustrated, to have the honesty and the transparency and the freedom to say, you know what, I don't want to do it today either.
Mm-hmm.
I can't be the best guide, the best teacher. I can't hold space for this because guess what? I'm annoyed too. And that's okay. We're going to go do something else for a while.
Yeah.
Because if I'm like that, it's not going to be good for anybody.
Yeah. No, it's huge. And it's that same concept, right? A happy wife, happy life sort of deal. But it's the same thing with like the mom, you're the teacher. And so there are some days where I'm like, this isn't working. We're just going out and we'll do something. Again, we learn every day. I mean, at the end of the year in Colorado, you've got to check all the days that you did school. And it's like, well, I mean, we're doing school every day. When we're out learning, yesterday we were at the river. We saw a river otter go by. So then we started talking about it. Why do they look the way they do? How are they not cold in the river? I mean, it just, and then before you know it, they all know about river otters and where they live and why they live there and where they go in the winter. And it's so fun to be able to have that. But it's just putting those lenses on, like, you know, Kimberly used putting the math goggles on, but it's just those lenses on all the time. I get my I guess I would say regular school friends together in the summer. We get together more often because in the school year, I mean, we're always on the go, we're on different schedules, but in the summer we're kind of on the same schedule. And they're like, I see why you're a homeschool mom. And I wasn't always like that, but it's like, you see something and you're like, oh, check that out. That's a geranium plant. Did you know that repels bugs? Did you? And you're just kind of going on it. So you put these lenses on, and you kind of go with it. But absolutely, if you're having a hard day, say, you know what, we're going, we're out, we're going to do something else, and we'll try again later. And you may not try again later. That's okay too. But being able to say no, I mean, that is the freedom of homeschool. That is the backbone of homeschool, is being free to say, we're not learning today. Today's the day that we're not getting anything through. So let's reevaluate. Let's step back. What can we do to make this more exciting for you? Also, engaging your kids.
Yeah. And to say you are learning though.
Yeah.
That's a reframe. That's a huge reframe, because you are still learning at the river watching the otter go by, right? It's just different. It's just different. We're not going to do this thing that we had planned, but it doesn't mean we're not learning, engaging, thriving, and growing.
That's that unschooling mentality. And I said that myself, but I really don't like that term. Because,
I totally knew what you meant though.
but it just kind of, it just irks me a little bit, but it's just not having a curriculum is really what it is. Because they even have nature-based, they have something called Oak Meadow, which is a nature-based curriculum. It's a curriculum you follow, whatever. That wouldn't work here where we have winter 9 months out of the year pretty much. But it's, unschooling really is just learning on the go, not having a set curriculum. And we are very much that way now, but we use, like Kimberly, I've got to have boxes checked. And when I wasn't checking or highlighting, saying we were doing something, it just never worked for me. I need to know that we're, on track for sure. So anyway.
That you guys have so much wisdom, and the one thing that you both just spoke into is having the ability, like working through your own crap, right? As a teacher and as a mom, and allowing your kids to see that is huge in my book, right? I think that allowing your kids to have the freedom, and allowing yourself to have the freedom, and teaching them that, because that's not something that they learn in a public school setting. And the value, just taking a step back and looking at the value of them being able to learn that on a daily basis and evaluating that, I think is a very big lesson that almost I don't want to get too far down the road in that, but that is almost be taken out of public school kids. And I'm not saying like Montessori and other things, and I'm not saying that it can't happen at home, but I think that the value in that is very big. And I thank you guys for speaking wisdom into that. Kelly, do you have any questions with that cute little baby that you're holding?
Sorry, it's been a bit of a madhouse here. We're doing pretty well. I finally picked a curriculum, and I'm kind of a personality A. I like to check the boxes, and now we have a plan, and it's to flow by the seat of our pants. So I think we're just going to have a good year. I'm really excited that I was forced to make this decision, because I think it's going to be a good one for us.
Good. I love hearing that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
There's a saying, I don't know if I'm officially saying it right or wrong, but don't waste a good crisis.
Yes.
And what you were saying leads into that, like you were, forced to make this decision, right? So we have a crisis, we have choices to make, and sometimes there's that ember, that light that's in there, and we're gonna use the nudge to say, okay, I'm gonna jump that way because that's what's showing up, right? So
that was one thing that I wanted to say to Lucy is that, if there was ever a right time to try homeschooling, now is that time. And I have said that. I've talked to so many people recently about homeschooling, and it's like, you know, if you've thought about it, I mean, now's the right time, because even regular school isn't looking the same. And so if you wanted to try it, you can always go back. And I think that that's kind of a stigma, is that people feel like, well, once I start, then I'm like stuck in here. That's not true. If you want to go back to school, you can.
Well, to speak into, and not to cut you off, but to speak into Lucy, I know that they are in a very, very well-loved special school that they'll lose their spot at.
Right. Which is probably why I lost the thought in that process. But I thought, you know, like Kelly had mentioned, but you know, because you're so right. And in our small town here, it's very similar to that. Even our charter school is that way, where people are afraid to, if they completely back out, not knowing, even though they've not given them all the details on school yet. When you lose your spot, you lose your spot, and it's a waiting list, and it's a lengthy waiting list. And Lucy, it's awful to hear that you're in that sort of situation, but
yeah, it's very frustrating, because really I want to just be like, screw all you guys. I'm gonna here. I can, you know, just you guys, whatever, figure out. But
that's right.
when I look long term and big picture, I'm like, I don't know, like if my kids love their school, and who knows how it's going to be in the spring, and then what if the situation is right that they could actually go back, and then, oh no, sorry kids, you can't go back because I pulled you out, and you know, so I don't know.
There's truth in both, right? Because there's truth in saying this is the nudge to go, right? And then there's truth in, but they do love it, and I will lose my spot, and so
yeah.
I feel you, because I can feel the spot that you're in.
And so I have several friends who feel the same way, and I think pretty much the consensus now is don't do anything rash. You know what I mean? Let's just kind of keep our spots, see how it is, right, and then take it from there. But that's why I like to keep my foot in this conversation with you guys, because I want to keep my options open, you know, going into the fall, and have all these ideas and stuff if we do need to just say, no, this is not, this is, well, you know,
that's really great. That's really great that you're getting your foot in the door. Yeah. So I guess that comment was totally not directed at you, but anyone else watching, you know, really, if you're on the edge, if it's never a right time, it's now. Yeah. And we are happy to help you any way that we can. Maybe I'm speaking for myself, but I mean, I know that Kimberly and Nikki are obviously doing this once a week. They're invested. But I think that the school districts are probably making a really bad decision here by doing partially online, because I think a lot of people, at least in this town, a lot of people are going the homeschool route, and I don't know what that's going to look like for the school district in later years. So we'll see, but.
Awesome. Well, thank you, ladies. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. Thank you guys for joining. And please let us know if you have any questions. Like Rachel said, we are here to support you in any way that we can. And you will find your community and your village that are willing to help you in any way that they can. So thank you.
Yeah. And Lucy,